I am so sick of reading this book, talking about the Bible, and it just being stories on a page. Mm-hmm. And you said, if we are ever going to live our story of faith, we have to do what God is saying to do. We have to plant this church. Hey, thanks for joining us today on You've Got to Hear This. We're so glad that you're here. This is our podcast. I'm Crystal. This is my husband, Tyler.
It's me.
And this podcast is designed to help you build and live a life you love, to defy your limitations and take risks. And today, and in this season, we're kicking off a brand new season of this episode.
What number season is it?
I think it's 4. I've lost count, but I'm pretty sure it's season 4.
If you'd asked me that back when this started, if it had made it 4 seasons, whatever that translates to, I'd have been like, yeah, nobody's listening to this for 4 seasons. But maybe you're the one. You're still here. And Mom, thank you. Thank you so much for being that one. So
well, listen, we've always done this podcast just to help a few people.
That's all we're here for.
And in this season specifically, we don't really care if we help anybody. We are out to we are out to memorialize and to get on into we're out to save, if you will, and scribe down what God has done in our, what we're going to call volume 1 of our story of building a life that we love. And if you happen to be listening to this or watching this and you glean some wisdom out of it, no matter where you are in your building journey, whether you're building a family or a business or a ministry or a church, maybe if you can glean some wisdom, we'll be happy you do that. But really, this is a selfish season. I want to memorialize just what we've learned along the way, so that maybe those who come behind us can learn and maybe can go further and faster and build a little bit higher. So that's what we're doing. We are going to, in each episode of this season, really define and name the big lessons we've learned through the first 15 years. Our church is on we're in this journey right now, and we're getting so close to moving. As of the filming of this date, we are about 8 weeks, June, July, 12 weeks away from moving out of the location that we have been building our church and our ministries and our organizations in for the last 8 years. Yeah. And it's been, we'll talk more about the last 8 years in this season of podcasts and everything we've learned, but it just feels like we're at this kind of precipice, if you will, we're at this time where it's really critical, and we're moving into a different phase of, organizational development. We've gone from inception, where we just I'm going to say inception, where like the idea was like placed into our mind, like the movie,
like where Leonardo DiCaprio,
basically
traveled back through our dreams, and planted an idea in the depths of our subconscious.
Yes, like
that's exactly right.
That's what God did with us all those years ago as we walked.
I don't think Leo was involved.
No, Leo was not there.
Leo wasn't there. No,
I think we were born for this.
Great movie, by the way.
Great movie.
Sorry, it's a little old, but it's still good on a plane if you need a recommendation.
It's a good movie.
Please continue.
But I do think that God did put us on this earth for everything we've done. Sure. So there was some sort of destiny, if you will, and some plan that was ordained for you and I specifically in the depths of our hearts.
And I would argue that is true for everyone listening. Absolutely. Or even not listening.
1,000%.
It was true for us.
Yes. All the people who treat you around, and then whatever it is in your heart, that's what Tyler's saying, that there's something that places in your subconscious, if you will, that you were meant for. And we've been living that. So from inception to then conception, where we actually took what was inside of us and brought life to, right? Sure. We partnered with God to bring this baby. And then the last, I really think 15 years have been so much like, just adolescent development, where you go from toddlerhood, infancy, toddlerhood, being a young child, really growing up. And then, now I feel like where we are is in that like becoming an adolescent, where we can grow into maturity and into adulthood, so to speak. StoryHeights Church, our businesses, where the vision and mission can live beyond us.
Is that why we are like feeling super hormonal and filled with angst? Because we're like teenage adolescents?
I think so. I mean, as of the filming of this episode, we're scared to death. I will just let you know that. We are very emotional lately. We are, trying to, move our church into this new building. We took a building that is going to help the church live way beyond us by creating a financial multi-million-dollar legacy to help other people, plant churches out of our church, to help other ministries form, to develop other leaders, future pastors, future missionaries. And so, we really are in this moment, but it was a huge faith step. The building we took on was way bigger than our church could afford. Again, that's going to be one of the episodes in this season. It needed the Lord's hand.
Surely.
We could not do it on our own.
Sure. Yes.
What would you say about that?
I mean, when you say it like was bigger than we could afford, it makes it sound like there was no like due diligence.
Of course.
We weighed the cost. It was a very calculated risk is a better way to say it.
But the risk was still there.
There's still a risk. Of course, there's always a risk.
We knew if God did not provide or move on the hearts of people to give and to be a part, that in the natural.
Yeah. Well, and what you're saying is it's all a part of growing up.
It is.
And that's what we're doing. We're growing up. Growing pains.
And so we do find ourselves very emotional these days. Like, what are we doing? Because we want this to live past us. We know that if we stay where we are, just like any person who stays immature, they will never grow into their fullest God potential, like what God intended when that inception happened of that plan and that destiny. So as founders, we very much so want it to live, StoryHeights Church, to live beyond us and go to the hands of the next generation. We're not done by any means. We still have a long time to lead, but at the end of the day, we're having to make steps right now that if we stay where we are, it won't survive.
Well, and that's kind of true if you back this up all the way to the beginning of this story, right? We were in that same sort of mindset 15 years ago, 16 years ago, 17 years ago, where if we stay where we are, we're not going to make it.
Yes.
Not like physically, but like we were in that same sort of tension.
That's right.
And that's what we're talking about today.
And it's been a great story. We lived a great story. So today's episode, we're calling this kind of chapter 1 of volume 1, so to speak. The big lesson that we want you to glean from, you to think through, is always follow God's voice. Like if we had to sum up those early years, those inception years, we'll call them, before vision was even a reality, it was simply just an idea, is always follow God's voice, like listen and obey him. So Tyler, let's take the audience and the listeners, maybe people, we've shared some of this story, the early season 1, as we talk about building a life you love, defying your limitations. We've talked about some of this, but let's just, again, to describe what it is God did, so that, people who don't know this story, we're hopefully going to put all this in book format as well. So whether you like to listen to podcasts or read it, but there's a great story and in what God has done. And that was, if anything, I just want my kids, our 4 kids, I want them, because right now they don't think their parents are cool. They don't really realize, maybe wit's starting to get a little bit, but they don't really realize.
They were cool?
Well, not cool, but like that we actually followed God in faith, that us, along with, all of our early founders,
sure,
have really brought something, with the Lord into something. And I don't think they get that. So hopefully we're putting this into the web and into the airwaves and hopefully on paper, so that they can look back when they're old enough and they truly understand what it means to sacrifice and what it means to build something.
Yeah. And
that story will be written down for them.
Of course.
So let's take all those people back. Think about people who are going to come to StoryHeights Church in our new season, our next home, our next chapter. and they will never know of the early years. Let's tell them the story.
Okay.
Okay.
And so then we just go back and say,
yeah, let's start with like all the way from the beginning, not the church. Let's get all the way to like not AMC, but like just the battles we fought mentally, externally. We don't have to go through like we were on staff, all that. We can just sum it up with our pastors thought we were nuts. We were young. After The Big Short, we couldn't find a job.
Okay.
Let's do that. But we can talk about how, it was difficult and we lost friends and families and our job and
all right,
all of that.
So we'll tell you the story, but you got to know it's not like awesome at the beginning, right? And that's where we're starting because
Very beginning.
according to The Sound of Music, it's the very best place to start.
I knew we were going there.
So you start at the beginning, and from the beginning, the story is filled with heartache. It's filled with grief. It's filled with loss, struggle, stress.
It's a good word.
Mental, emotional, physical. You encouraged, right? Like you're feeling great about this right now. So like we had a really nice setup in our early 20s with the job that we had, the money that we were earning. Again, early 2000s, right? Like money is different then than it is now. So it's all in context and to scale. But
I think we made $9 an hour.
Something
like that.
Yeah, but we could pay our bills and we could, have fun with our friends. And we had a couple of kids, or early 20s, and then had this strange dissatisfaction with this life that we were living. And again, not really being able to explain it at the time. It took us a while to work through it, but ultimately, as we prayed and we sought God's wisdom and we sought counsel from people we trusted, we landed on the fact that we were dissatisfied with what we were doing and where we were because God had more for us to do in a different place. And that's where the idea of planting a church kind of incepted.
Incepted? Is that?
Septicized?
Right.
Whatever that word is, that's where it happened. And from there, you would hope that the story would be like, oh gosh, this is great. We tell people that think should be excited about it, about planting a church, like church people. And they were like, that's a terrible idea. You're probably going to die. They may not have said that, but they might as well have said that. Like, it's not going to work, especially when we told them where we wanted to go to plant a church.
Well, let's go back to that. Again, people that don't know the story at all. We're feeling dissatisfied. We're like, golly, you start feeling, maybe you're like this. You start feeling there's kind of like this yearning for more, yearning for like, I should be doing something different. I think a lot of that's natural in your 20s where you're like figuring out like, why am I on the earth? You had a business administration degree. I had a sociology degree.
Unimpressive.
But
especially in the eyes of potential employers, they couldn't have cared less.
Right. So we were in ministry and that's what we loved to do. That was our passion. So when we found ourselves dissatisfied, it was kind of like, why?
So
we have no reason to feel this way. We were in a very alive church. We had so many friends, like everything was wonderful, but there was still that, I just remember for me, there was still that, like when I would close my eyes at night, I would think, I'm not where I'm supposed to be. Like, this is not my final destination. And I think I would just encourage you, if you close your eyes at night and you dream of more, if you feel like, there's something in your heart that you need to do, that's where we go to just follow God's voice. Like, that is God leading,
Sure.
It may not be in the right time or the right context, and you may not see it fully or understand it. And when we're young, I think we make the mistake to think it all has to happen like immediately, right then and there.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, I'd still rather follow God's voice than ignore it.
Sure.
And so I think, that was like that feeling for me. And then we just happened to go on vacation. Your mom is a math teacher, and she had, or was.
I guess you once a math teacher, always a math teacher.
And she had a math conference in Boston, and she said, "Hey,
cool." My mom is so cool, man. Math conferences. Can you imagine?
But she said, if you guys want to come, we had just had our first son. He was like 4 or 5 months old.
Yeah.
And we certainly couldn't afford to take ourselves to Boston.
Nope.
Just if you want to come, I'll buy your plane tickets and your hotel room. And we were like, oh, yeah, we'll go
hotel rooms, but yes.
We'll go then, right? And so we came to Boston. That was our first time in 2007. I remember because Whit was born in 2007 in March. I think it was that summer. And we came and we walked around as tourists and just, we loved the city. I think what it was happening in that moment is that we were both like yearning for more. And then we come to like this big, huge, beautiful city. And I can't say that we immediately thought church planting in that moment. That was about a year or so later. But it was more like, oh, I just remember us walking around being like, I want to live here. I wish we could live in a place like that.
Yeah, sure. Do you think, just conversationally, do you think that if my mom's math conference had been in Cleveland and we'd have walked around Cleveland, that would have been like, oh my gosh, Cleveland?
I don't know. I've never been to Cleveland.
I'm saying pick a spot.
Yeah.
Chicago.
Well, I know my sister lived in New York.
Toledo.
Well, my sister lived in New York City at the time.
What New York? New York didn't do it for us.
New York didn't do it for you, but I remember.
If you're listening from New York,
we apologize.
It's too late. It's not too late. You can move from New York. You are not obligated to remain there. Come to Boston. Better baseball here too.
Well, and after going from New York to Boston, we were like, oh man, now like I could live here. Can't do New York.
Answer my question though. Like if we'd have landed in okay, San Diego's bad. Everybody wants to live in San Diego. But if you'd have landed in
just
Boise,
random else.
Like it would have been like in that season where we were dissatisfied with where we were and what we were doing. If the vacation had been to Crested Butte, would we be like, oh my gosh, we have to live in Crested Butte?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't know if you're wanting me to say yes right now.
I don't care what you say. That's why I asked you the question.
I don't think so because I don't think we were designed for those places. Okay. I think that at the end of the day, this truly is where the Lord was planning and he wanted us. And we didn't know that then. I think we did go to other places in that season. We would go visit Florida. We would go skiing. And I never felt something come alive in me like I did when I was walking around, downtown Boston and imagining this is my city. This is where I want to live.
Turns out that is the answer I wanted you to get.
Okay, good.
Because it's, and the point
do you feel that
in my head, yes, is more than we didn't like where we were and we just were bored and wanted an adventure.
Because we did love.
There was a calling behind it.
There was a calling.
And that was the beginning of the calling.
And I remember in that first trip when we walked around, we did all the tourist stuff. We went to the, Tea Party ship and we went down to the USS Constitution and we walked, down by the old churches and the old library, the Boston Library. And we did the Paul Revere Trail and all of that. And I remember, the thing I do remember thinking is, I think God's doing something in this city.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't articulate it. I still don't think I can articulate it 17 years later. But I could feel like...
19 years later.
Oh, it's been that... Yeah, that was... I can't do math. That was 2007, 19 years ago.
How old is your son?
Yeah.
It's your son's age, yeah.
I don't think we can still articulate it, but it's like we could feel, and maybe this will help a church planter right now who may listen to this episode, maybe in whichever form or fashion, but you can almost feel the wind of God, like the Spirit of God that was moving around us. And I remember us saying, man, if our church ever planted a church here, I remember us saying,
like a campus,
we would be the first to sign up to say, move us here. And it was a place we had never been. It was a people we did not understand. Sure, there was a sexiness to Boston, especially back then. Church planting was like a really sexy thing, as it has become even more so today. And I think there is this element, like when you're walking down Newberry Street, you think, oh, I'm going to have this raving church in this amazing old city and it's going to blow up. And we'll get to that in future episodes for future church planners.
The second great awakening.
the third, the fourth great awakening, there is that sexiness to us. If I were to tell you we did not have that allure and that temptation as we got further into the church planting conversation, we would be lying to you.
Correct.
I think there has to be some sort of a mirage for you to leave everything you love and know.
For sure.
To follow it. Once you get into it, obviously it becomes a little bit different. But we skip ahead a little bit. Let's stay in this inception mode.
Yeah. So, all right. So we have all of that. It's like an inception sort of concept idea. We go back. It's just ours. We haven't shared it really with anybody.
We're just like, oh my gosh, Boston was amazing.
It begins to grow. It begins to multiply.
That seed in our heart. Yeah.
And I believe it was God that was making it grow. And so then it went from idea to like a what if.
Wait, maybe. Let me ask you a question for the listener. How do you know, how can they discern if it's God making something grow in your heart?
I can't answer that for everybody.
Okay.
I can answer for me.
Okay.
For me, how I discern that is if it's still in my head and my heart after a week, and then after a few weeks, and then after a month or two. If something is a Tyler something, it is literally in and then it is out. And that is maybe it's a curse. I believe it's a blessing because nothing really stays too long. I'm able to keep moving and I don't get bogged down in too much stuff. Right. I get bogged down in stuff. I'm not a superhero, but it's not as deep as some people get bogged down. And so for me, when I have an idea, I can generally discern that it is a God idea when I'm still thinking about it 2 months later and it's still percolating and it's like there's another layer, right? It presented a challenge and then the thought continued to solving that challenge and continuing to stack things up and build something beyond just the seed into an actual thing.
Yeah. The word for me is obsession. Like when I become obsessed with an idea, I'll be driving, I can't stop thinking about it, or it just keeps coming. And I remember in those early days, like when we got back from Boston, it was all we could talk about. Yeah, I think you could ask all of our friends back then. It was all we could talk about. It was all we could dream about.
They probably got annoyed with this.
Oh, probably.
They might still be annoyed.
Well, and that leads to kind of the part of the heartache is, I think, if you read the Bible, you'll read the story of Joseph, and he has these dreams, right? And he becomes obsessed with what God is showing him about his future.
And a little cocky, as most young people get. And he started running his mouth to all his brothers. To where they and his parents, and to the point where they became a little resentful. Yeah.
And I would say definitely 19 years ago, we were definitely Joseph in that moment, probably running our mouth about what God was going to do and what we could see in our spirits and how God view this. And meantime, we still very much have this task in front of us that God has already put in our hands to be faithful where we were as youth ministers at this church we were at. That had very much been a God moment for us there as well. And so I would just say to those of you listening, if you find yourself in the in-between, between being faithful with where you are now and being faithful to go to where God is calling you, I would just encourage you to be very wise and careful in that very sensitive season.
For sure. Because void of that caution, it opens the door to a lot of heartache and a lot of pain, because like Joseph's brothers and parents, not everybody's going to be as excited about your vision as you are, and they weren't about ours. And that backtracks a little bit to what I said earlier. We would tell people this is what we feel like God is doing and would be told that's unwise. You should put that dream on a shelf. You are too young. You are too Southern. Boston is
too hard.
From where we were, literally, in South Louisiana, when you talk about Boston, it was on the same level, I think, mentally wise, as like Greek mythology, right? When you think about the history of Boston and all those things, because it's so far away and it's like, oh yeah, there's that place that all those things happen, but it's almost like it wasn't even real. And so when you say you're going to a place that doesn't even seem real to us, it's so far away and so beyond the scope of what we would where we would go or where we would ever be or where we would ever choose to be, people were really negative, you know?
Yeah.
People that were close to us and that we trusted were like kind, but kind of negative, kind and negative at the same time. And then people that were in authority were downright just don't do it. Yeah. You're not doing it. And it was a confusing time. It was a painful time. We have to fast forward a little bit in some of this, but we got prayerfully transitioned off of the staff of our church, which means we got fired. That's just the church way of saying it. We're going to prayerfully transition you into a new season. And so we prayerfully transitioned into unemployment. That was our new season. Crystal's, no, wait, hold on.
Okay.
Crystal's had low back issues.
Yeah.
The back she was completely in pain constantly. So it was mental pressure, physical pressure. So all that ramping up to unemployment. We're working whatever jobs we can find. I'm pretending like I know how to paint and fix houses. She's cleaning houses for people that were once, like their kids were once in our care as their youth pastors. It was a complete reversal.
A humbling.
Like to some degree, and maybe it's human pride, but humiliating.
Yeah.
And that's where we were. We were there for at least 6 months, maybe longer, about a year.
What I was going to interrupt to say was when we got prayerfully transitioned, aka let go.
Yeah.
There was a reason behind it, right? It was our leaders, our pastor recognized that our heart was no longer with that current vision and mission. And as the steward of that vision and mission, he had a responsibility. He had been tasked by the Lord with a current vision and mission, a church to build, to ensure that people who were aligned with that vision and mission were there. We obviously were no longer those people. And so we certainly don't blame him by any means. But what I will say, I just wanted to clarify. Okay. And what I'll say is what I think he recognized, because I remember our pastor saying to us, I've been praying and I feel like your season here is over. And then he got up and he said, but don't worry, I'm not firing you. You're the most faithful employees we've ever had. Yeah. And he said, I feel like if we keep you here, you won't do what God has in your heart to do. And so he actually told us that day, he said, I want you to go dream and I want you to go pray. And he didn't automatically affirm Boston. In fact, he told us, you're too young, put that dream on a shelf. But he did begin to have us go interview at other churches for more development things. And here's, again, we're talking about that inception and following God's voice and whatever that journey looks like for you. So we were very faithful, obedient. We very much believe in being under a pastor's leadership and under authority. And we weren't just going to tromp to Boston in our own strength. We wanted God to release us in his time. So we were not going to go until our pastor blessed us on, right? That like we had his full blessing and covering. And so we went and we interviewed at a whole bunch of different churches all around the country. And I kid you not, in one of the interviews, it was in Washington, D.C. at a church for, I can't remember what we were interviewing for, associate pastor something. The pastor there, before we left, he said, I feel like you have a church in you and you guys should just plant a church. And it was like confirmation, like that's what was in our heart. Then we interviewed at a church in Massachusetts, which you cannot make this up. 20 years later is literally in the same neighborhood as our new building in our next chapter in our new home God's given us. And in that interview,
it wasn't on purpose either.
No, that's a whole, we'll get to that in later episodes of how that, how we got to where we are today. But in that was a week-long interview. And when he pushed the contract across the table to us, asking us for a 5-year commitment, he said to you and to me, he said, I feel like you're wrestling with God about something. Yeah. And so he said, I want you to go home and I want you to take a week and really wrestle out with God what it is that God wants from you in your next chapter.
Yeah.
And that whole next week, we're talking about, inception, like God placing something in your heart. This hasn't been conceived yet. It's just literally vision that's in our heart. We're staring at this contract. It is a wonderful salary. They have a Christian school our kids could go to. It is basically the life in Baton Rouge that's being offered to us in the city that we want to live in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
But there's still this like struggle in our hearts of, do we plant a church or do we take a job?
Right.
And I remember us tossing and turning, kind of like we are right now.
Sure.
Right? Every night. We're tossing and turning, and we're like, what do we do? Because in one lane, there was no job, there was no security, there was no health insurance, there was only unknowns, and nobody was singing the praise to do it.
And you were pregnant.
Oh, and I was pregnant, by the way, with our third baby. Right? Third. We'll get to that. Third child, third pregnancy. And we had nobody backing us. There was nobody saying plant a church. However, every night we'd wake up, just take the job. It'll get us to Massachusetts. But then we'd wake up and there'd be like that's not what we're supposed to do. Right. The Lord is saying we're supposed to plant a church.
Right.
That there's a timing to this. So at the end of that week,
the night before,
we're
supposed to call with an answer. You wake up and you're in pain, and we have to go to the emergency room with no health insurance, no jobs, no nothing. I mean, you talk about
it was so silly.
It was such a shift for us, and not like it's not a brag or nothing. It just was a complete undoing of our whole world. And we end up in the ER at Women's Hospital in Baton Rouge. It's like 4 a.m, and you're miscarrying. We're miscarrying, I should say. Physically, it was with you, but we were both there together. And so the emotion and pain of that, and like you don't downplay it. And I'm not downplaying that in you or in any woman's journey. But the reality of it was that the real struggle in that moment, it wasn't only with the physical, it was in the emotional, the decision that we were under, the weight that we were under to make this decision. And
I'll never forget, I'm in that emergency room, the screens up at the top where you can see the ultrasound, like what's going on in my womb, and there's no baby. And honestly, again, this is the night before we have to make the decision. There's the church planting organizations have told us no. We have no job anymore. We're painting houses, cleaning houses, living paycheck to paycheck, getting benevolence groceries from your parents' church. They felt sorry for us.
God bless you.
We're getting government state-funded health insurance in this point because we have no job, no health insurance. And we're in this moment. It's a critical juncture. And as I'm watching this baby that I've now miscarried, I'm honestly not even thinking about that. I just was like, we have to take the job.
Mm-hmm.
This is our future. We're going to, we have nothing. And I looked at you and I said, babe, just take the job. It'll get us to Massachusetts. I know 5 years seems like a long time, but it'll get us there. And who knows what God will do, but we have to take the job.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never forget what you said to me. You happen to have this little red Bible that we've since locked away because I think
Do you know where it is?
I do. I've locked it away because
I'd have lost it. I'm so bad at keeping up.
It's so tiny. He gave it to us. He gave it to me on our first wedding anniversary.
And then I took it from you shortly thereafter.
And made it yours.
It's my own. Yep.
But you had that in the hospital with us.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, babe, just take the job. And you looked at me with this look. And some of you know this look I'm talking about, where you get determined. And you might find yourself, there's probably a church planter listening, and you are determined. Like, you are listening to this podcast and you know the look I'm talking about.
And you're listening, you're not watching, you're not missing anything visually, because I can't recreate.
You can't recreate the look, but there was this look that you looked at me, that you had never looked at me, because the look that I had been getting for the last year, as we were going through all of the heartache and the loss and friends not talking to us and feeling like we were blacklisted and just rejection after rejection, was the look you had looked at me was fear, hopelessness, rejection, And you looked at me now differently and you said, no, we cannot take this job. And your words, and I think it is the chapter 1 of StoryHeights Church, and it's what we've built our ministry, and it's the core value of who we are as a church. You said, I am so sick of reading this book, talking about the Bible, and it just being stories on a page. Mm-hmm. And you said, if we are ever going to live our story of faith, we have to do what God is saying to do. We have to plant this church.
Yeah.
And it was in that moment I saw you. Do you remember saying that?
Yeah, bits and pieces.
And I remember looking at you and I thought...
Probably exhausted and a little...
Just like 3 in the morning.
Adrenaline heavy. The memories are fading, but...
But I remember looking at you and I thought, I can follow that. And so the next morning, we go home and you have to have the call with the pastor who had offered us this very generous job. Mm-hmm. And you had to tell him no.
The dude. He was kind. He wasn't like, bad idea, wrong choice. He was kind.
He was kind. What did he say?
Chris, I
don't remember.
Yeah, that's asking too much of me. But I do remember him being kind.
So that was in September of that year. Mm-hmm. And we still didn't move to Boston. And we'll cover in the next episode that now the conception part. But we waited another 4 months until the Lord finally spoke to our pastor. How many months?
Well, 5 months till we had that conversation. We're talking about that next time.
That the Lord spoke to our pastor.
5 months, and then a little bit of 8 months before we actually...
The Lord finally...
Our zip code.
Our pastor finally called us. So that was September when we turned the job down. And in the end of that year, December, our pastor called us and he said, I've been praying and I feel like we're supposed to get behind you. When are you moving to Boston? Mm-hmm. And so I think that's looking back 19 years ago in those very dark hours where it feels like it's so hard to hear the Lord. Because lately we've been in that season again where it feels like God has told us to do something, take on this $10 million project that it honestly feels too big for us.
Yeah. And it's funny because every time we say the budget, we just jokingly just add another couple million because it's not actually.
It started at 5.
But it feels like 19 million. You know, might as well, 43 million. Who knows? You know, who knows how much it's cost.
But regardless, you may be feeling like what God's calling you to do is way too big for you.
Yeah.
Starting your photography business, starting your real estate business, going back to school with 3 kids, getting your master's in something, starting a church, moving across the country to do something. I don't know what it is that God is placing in the fabric of your identity.
Yeah.
But I just want to tell you, 19 years later, his voice can be trusted.
Yeah, it's good.
And if you will follow it, you will defy every limitation and you will end up building and living a life that you love.
Yeah.
We're living proof of that.
And I add 2 things before it sounds like we're signing on episode 1. Number 1, 7 days, call it, after the conversation with our pastor, where he was prayerfully transitioning us off, I didn't see it and I didn't love it. 19 years removed from that, 17 years removed from that, I completely understand.
1,000%.
I have a much broader perspective of the bigger picture of what was going on there, what's going on here. So I get that. That's one thing. And number 2, to your point, what you just said, what you're describing is something that we heard a long time ago. Everybody's probably heard it at this point. It's probably in everyone's social media algorithm right now. But it's true that if you want to live like no one else gets to live, you have to do what no one else is willing to do. Whether you're a church planter or you're an entrepreneur or you're a mom that works from home
and you want
kids crawling around, or you're raising kids, or you're sitting in your cubicle right now with earpods in, listening to us talk about this. It doesn't matter the context. The principle is true. If you want a life that nobody else gets to have, then you're going to have to do some things that nobody else is willing to do. And as we sit here and recap these moments in our story, that's what they are. It wasn't that we were special. It wasn't that we were super qualified. I mean, my gosh, still not super qualified, but we were willing to do the things that a lot of other people talked about, but nobody ever actually did. And I think that's the, I don't know, that's what gets us going. That's what kept us going. And that's what certainly has brought us to where we are today.
So to the people reading this, listening to this, watching this, to the future pastors in our church, to the future people that are going to build businesses and impact the world, to the future godly men and women that are going to raise world-changing families in a place like Boston, we want to encourage you. If you get obsessed about something, if you feel like if you don't do what's pressing in your heart to do, hear it from us. Do it. Even if we disagree, even if we don't see it, even if you need our validation but you don't get it, follow God's voice. He is the only voice that matters. He is God. We are not.
Yeah.
And I promise you, he can be trusted.
Yeah, and he will always confirm what you hear him say with what he has already said, as it is written down in his word. So you can hear from God, and you do it, and you live a life that you love. Live and build a life.
Thanks for joining us. In episode 2, we're going to talk more about how we actually started a church. So if you're thinking about starting a church, especially in a post-Christian, very urban setting, expensive region, you're going to want to tune in for that.
In other words, you've got to hear this.